Hi guys, this interview coming up is with a really good friend of mine of almost 20 years, Big Joe Egan. So I know you've seen Big Joe before, but this is quite an interesting interview with him. I managed to put in all the footage of him that I've been a part of over the years. So it's introduced by Mike Tyson. It's got footage of Tyson, Sugar Ray Leonard, loads of boxing greats, Jake LaMotta. So I think you'll really enjoy it. It's a good one.
To my good friend who I lived with for so many years, Big Joe Egan. And hopefully next time I'm in Birmingham, I can hang out with you. I'm on some kind of weird parole system with the UK, so I can't see them go over there. I don't know how this stuff works, but I miss all you guys in Birmingham and in London and in the whole England area. God bless you all.
Hi folks, so here I am with a very, very good friend of mine, Big Joe Egan, who I've known for many years now. In fact, we're just talking, it was probably about 18, 19 years. And in fact, I first met Joe, I think, at a party at Dave Courtney's house with Kaz Pennant. Is that right, Joe?
That's right, Liam. Yeah, it's great to see you.
And you. Tell us about, do you remember any of that? Do you remember that party?
I do indeed. Kaz was promoting my potential book. We'd met at a Joe Fraser tribute night, and I was introduced to Kaz, and I spoke to Kaz about maybe doing a book about me. So he asked me to come to his office the next day, spoke to him about Mike Tyson and my sparring with Mike. And he said, yeah, he said, there's a book in you. So over a period of months, we went to different places in London. We became friends, but I remember him bringing me to a party at Dave Courtney's house.
They were wild parties.
Oh, I'm an Irishman that doesn't drink alcohol. People say to me, what sort of an Irishman are you? My dad says I'm a failure as an Irishman. So I'm at a party, everybody's drinking and having fun. 3 of the EastEnders actors were there, Steve McFadden, Leslie Grantham and John Altman, and it was great to meet them. Anyway, I was introduced to Liam. We just hit it off.
Yeah, fantastic. And I saw this big, huge man there with Kaz Pennant and Dave Courtney, and it was fantastic. And what do you remember about those parties? Because they were wild, weren't they? They really were fantastic.
The thing was, everybody was enjoying themselves.
Yeah.
That's what a party's all about.
Yeah.
Everywhere I looked, there was people laughing. And
jumping in the swimming pool, or whatever it was.
There was a lot of fun and games.
Yeah. So when you
what happens at Dave Courtney's house?
Yeah, you can't
stays at Dave Courtney's house. But Dave's a great guy and
it was
good friend of mine, and me and Liam have built a great friendship. You've travelled this journey with me.
Yeah.
The book journey. You've travelled this because that was more or less the beginning of the book journey.
Yeah. And then I remember that Kaz invited me, lovely man Kaz Pennant, invited me to the book launch, which of course was amazing.
One of the best days of my life.
Yeah.
Mike Tyson launched the book in Canary Wharf. Thousands and thousands and thousands of people. I know everybody was there for Mike Tyson, but Mike Tyson was there for me. Mm-hmm. And family had travelled from all over the world to be there with me on a momentous day. And
loads of boxers as well. But I mean,
several world champions. World champions in attendance.
Yeah. Which
was amazing. And Liam filmed the whole event. Charlie Hale compared the event. Yeah. Ranald Graham, who's no longer with us now, God rest Ranald, he did the signing. Mike Tyson did the signing. Yeah. Tom Patty, Mike's stepbrother, did the signing. Cass did the signing. Yeah. I did the signing. And
Steve Collins was there?
Steve Collins was in attendance. Yeah. Yeah. Paul Silky Jones. Yeah. Alan Minter, who's no longer with us, God rest him. Charlie Magri. Yeah.
Barry McGuigan.
Barry McGuigan. Yeah. Barry actually queued. Yeah. This is the part that I could not believe. Yeah. And I've got the photographs on my phone. Yeah. Barry queued with the crowds, and when he got to get the book signed by Mike Tyson along the queue, he was with his son Shane. I've jumped up, Barry McGuigan, and Barry was sort of in shock. And I've embraced Barry. We fought for the same manager, Mr. Eastwood, when I was a professional. And Barry came round, Mike Tyson was saying, "You're Barry McGuigan, man, what are you queuing for?" But Barry was very humble, and he queued alongside everybody else. His son Shane couldn't believe that Mike Tyson was in awe of Barry McGuigan. Yeah. But that's the phenomenon.
It was amazing. Dominic Negus was there.
Dominic was there. There was loads of great champions in attendance. It was a very special day in my life, and the fact that you captured it on film.
I remember the moment. I'll tell you this: when you were coming out of the bookstore, yes, and walking in, and there was a massive crowd there.
Thousands of people blocking it off the
I had to walk backwards in front of it. It was like one of those ring entrances that Mike Tyson might make, and as Joe was leading the way with Mike Tyson, I had to walk, and I think one of the bodyguards was carrying me backwards as I was filming it. It's fantastic.
It
was an amazing
very
experience.
special day. Kerry Kays,
Yes,
he was in attendance as well.
Yeah.
Kerry did a signing alongside us, one of the great nutritionists in the boxing and the bodybuilding world. You know, so there was.
What was it like for you though? That I mean, to have that. I mean, it must have been like such a thrill.
It was very special, to tell you the truth, Liam, and the fact that you've captured it on film, I've got it forever. I never believed anything like this could happen to me.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just an ordinary fella that didn't achieve greatness in boxing. I won 7 Irish boxing titles, which to me was a great achievement for me. But on the world stage, I wasn't anything special. I was Mike Tyson sparring partner for nearly 2 years, and it's a great claim to fame. But to have a book written about me, and to have Mike Tyson launch the book in Canary Wharf.
And he came over from another country or something.
He came from Brazil.
That was Brazil. It. Yes.
Cass had said to me when we spoke at that Joe Fraser night, I was half joking, half holding earnest. I knew who Cass was. My nephew Tom was a West Ham fan, so I knew Cass being the West Ham fan. And I said to Cass, I said, you might write a book about me, half joking, half holding earnest. And he said, well, let me listen to what you've got to say tonight. And he said, let me see if there's a book in you. Anyway, I did a talk that night alongside Joe Fraser and several other world champions. For me to be sitting on that table alongside these great world champions was something very special for me. Every fighter that climbs into the ring dreams about becoming a champion of the world. I wasn't good enough to become a champion of the world, but to get to share the top table with these champions was something special. Anyway, I had a few minutes to speak. Cass listened alongside the rest of the audience to what I had to say. I went over to speak to him afterwards. He said, come to my office the next day. So I went to his office the next day, and he said, if I could get Mike Tyson involved in the book, he said we could do something. And I remember phoning Mike, and Mike spoke to Cass on the phone, and Mike said, anything I can do for my brother Joe. So Mike did the foreword for the book, and he agreed to come over when the book was published to launch the book in Canary Wharf. And he said, no matter where I am in the world, he said, I will make my way to the UK.
And it came to a standstill, didn't it?
He came over from Brazil, and Canary Wharf, the book people in the bookshop in Canary Wharf had a number of book signings. They had the English rugby team doing a signing, they had numbers of stars doing the signings, but the impact of Mike Tyson, it's Mike Tyson that brings this euphoria, the electricity that man brings.
And do you remember that speech that he did when all the reporters were asking questions, and he talked about you and how difficult it was for you to come over to America as a young man and all that? Do you remember that?
I do indeed. It's hard. A fighter's life.
Amazing speech.
A fighter's life is a lonely life. You know, you've got to make a lot of sacrifices, and I believe that when you're pursuing a trade in boxing, because it's a trade, it's your livelihood when you're a professional fighter, to give yourself the best possible chance, you've got to go to different parts of the world to spar with different styles of fighters. Because when you get into the ring to fight an opponent that might have a style that you haven't been used to in sparring in your own country, you'll be found wanting on the night of your fight. But if you've gone to America or gone to England or gone to some parts of Europe and you've sparred with different fighters of different styles, on the night when you fight, you can learn in the sparring, because that's where you're supposed to learn your trade, in the sparring sessions, and you can utilise them lessons from the sparring in the actual fight. I learned my trade as a pro fighter. I learned my skills in America.
Joey's a wonderful person. He was real homesick. And it takes a lot of courage to come from a country and then come to another country, and just with so much expectations, and and being a fighter is not a glamorous life. You know, everybody always see the glory, but they don't know the story. It's a very lonely life being a fighter. For someone to come a few thousand miles from Europe and to come to America, where people are very judgmental and very cruel, and they're not as warm as most people, but he passed with flying colors. It's just not easy, and I know a lot of people understand what I'm saying, because they've been through their trials and tribulation and trying to grasp their success and goals in life, and they understand when you're trying to be the best in the world at anything, there's disappointments there, and then you have to deal with the disappointments and you have to move on, and I believe he's done that. He's proved he's done that, and he'll even explain it more so when you read his book. People
know that you have this relationship with Mike Tyson, but what is it actually like? We know you sparred with him and all that, but you're one side of the ring, he's the other side of the ring. What is the tactic? What do you do? What happens? This man is coming towards you. I mean, how do you deal with that?
It's really just cover up, to tell you the truth. With Mike, you can't I couldn't. You know, a lot of better men than me tried.
Yes.
You know, they tried to stand toe to toe with the man. His power punching was too hard. His speed was too fast. You know, and he knocked out a lot better men than me.
Yeah.
Because they took chances. When I was sparring with him, I covered up and I held on when I needed to hold on, and tried to tie him up as best I could, and tried to survive. Really, that's all I could do.
Did you ever feel that you landed a big shot on him?
No.
No. There wasn't any one time that you just suddenly connected, big one?
I probably landed a few punches on him over the year that we sparred, over the couple of years that we sparred, but nothing telling.
Was he like really ferocious then?
Yes, very, very ferocious. Cus used to say, what Mike lacks in experience, he uses in aggression. Yeah. And I did a lot more amateur fights than Mike, you know. And when I got to share the ring with him, I knew how special he was then, because the power of him and the speed of him. Because there's no point in being a powerful puncher if you can't deliver it with speed. Yeah. You know, Mike was very, very fast for heavyweight, and his power. Watching episodes of all time. Did you sit around at night in the camp with Cuss and him around that sort of table and did the whole thing? Yeah. We used to have dinner together, and Cuss, Camille and Manny, they made it like it was like a home from home. Oh, God, you know, and it was. How many people? I'm just trying, because you know sometimes we don't get into kind of the intricacies of this. So what happens is there like 6 people sitting around the table. There was different members of the team. You know, that would live in the house. Yeah. You know, there was Tom Patty would live in the house, Jay would live in the house, you know, so they were at the dinner. And then Camilla Manny, me and Mike, and then sometimes the Hilton boys from Canada, they would live in the house. But there was other parts where the sparring partners would live, and they would feed down there. But when I was there, I lived in the house. Yeah. I was made to feel like family. Fantastic. You know, and had the warmth of a family. Even though I was away from Ireland, and I was away from my family, they were like a second family, and the way they treated me, I had a lot of love and affection from Cuss, from Mike. Mike, when he wasn't hitting me, was a lovely man. You know? Didn't he one time, I think you said to me, didn't he comfort you one time when you were homesick? Oh yeah, battered me he battered me loads over the couple of years, but made me cry loads of times. But this particular day, I think I'm 99.9% sure it was Sugar Ray Leonard was in attendance. Right. Because there was a lot of great champions used to come and watch Mike, because he was this young 17, 18, 19-year-old heavyweight that went on to be the youngest ever heavyweight champion of all time. You know, but when he was a young teenager, he was making shockwaves in the boxing world. So a lot of these great champions used to come and see him spar. Anyway, this particular day, I'm 99% sure it was Sugar Ray Leonard was in attendance, and Mike was in great admiration of Sugar Ray, one of the greatest of all time. Yeah. And he wanted to put on a special display this particular day. So the sparring partners got severely punished that day, and I took a savage, worse beating than normal. Yes. Anyway, we went back to the house afterwards. I was all swollen up, battered and bruised. And you know, we're looking at the size of my limb. I don't miss many meals, you know, but this particular evening, I couldn't go down and sit at the dinner table. I was so badly battered. My jaw was swollen, my arms were black and blue. I wouldn't have even been able to lift up the fork, you know. And anyway, I'm in my room in the house, and I'm lying on my bed, I'm crying. I'm in a lot of pain, you know, and we're only teenagers, and sometimes boys can be very, very cruel. Absolutely. You know, and the boxing world, it's a savage sport, but it is only a sport, it's nothing personal. And Mike, Cuss used to insist that we all sat at the dinner table together, the ones who were living in the house. Mike came to my room, and he came up to my room. I'm sure Tom Patty was with him, his stepbrother. And he came into the room, and he didn't come into gloats. No. He didn't come in and like laugh at me that he was after battering me. He came in and he was concerned about his friend. You know, I'll never forget this. And he looked at me, I'm lying on the bed crying. And he said, Joe, man, he said, there's no need to cry. We know you're homesick, but we're your family now. Wonderful. I wasn't crying because I was homesick. I was crying because he was after battering me. But he didn't, like I say, come into gloat. He had affection for me and consideration and care. And at that moment in time, I did like him up until that moment in time. But after that moment in time,
You
I
liked him, yeah.
I liked him even more. I loved
Yeah.
the man dearly.
Yeah.
You know, and how you can say that you love a man dearly that beats you to a pulp regular is a strange sport, you know.
Yeah.
But he embraced me, brought me down to the dinner table, and like I said, it was a special moment for me.
Yeah. You've kept that friendship going over for years. Has he changed? I mean, because you must have been with him through different times, like when he's had his bad times and his good times.
Yeah.
I mean,
you can't live a person's life.
No.
You know, I love the man dearly. He's visited my mother in Dublin many times, and
I remember that moment that you came through Dublin Airport.
Special.
Unbelievable.
Very special. 22 years, Liam.
Yeah.
22 years talking to my mum on the phone.
Yeah.
And this particular day, he said, "How's your mother doing, Joe?" I said, "She's not so well, Mike. She had a lump removed from her throat." We're very concerned of being cancer. My Uncle Brian, God rest him, my mum's brother, had died at 47 with cancer, and my mum was a heavy smoker. I said, "Well, very worried, Mike." He said, "Let's go and visit your mum." So we landed in Dublin, flew out of the UK, landed in Dublin. We were in the UK at the time, and my mother, pardon me, had been released from hospital because there was the MRSA book in the hospital, and she was being cared for by her sister Linda.
Yeah.
So we went up onto the housing estate where my auntie Linda lived.
I mean, that's kind of weird, isn't it? It's taking him into the housing estate.
But not only is it kind of weird, Liam,
Yeah.
that was the housing estate that my family was evicted from.
Yeah.
I actually drove onto a housing estate
Yeah.
that my family was evicted from.
Yeah.
We were evicted from a house on that housing estate.
Yes.
You know, and now I'm driving onto that same housing estate with one of the greatest, if not the greatest heavyweight of all time, to visit my mum.
Yeah.
You know, so it was very special to be able to drive through my hometown,
Yes.
to drive onto that housing estate.
And then,
to
he goes
into
up to your mum, doesn't he? And
he embraced my mum.
Yeah,
This is a man. This is a
Must
man.
have been emotional for you.
It was very emotional in him. This is a man that can break bones with punches.
Yeah.
You know, I've been on the end of his punches, so I know the power of this man. And he embraced a fragile woman in his arms, a woman that he'd been speaking to on and off for 22 years, but never met her. She used to speak to him on the phone and she said, "Oh, Mike, thank you so much for looking after my son." He was beating me to a pulp most days. But she didn't know that. She just knew I was being minded in America. Anyway, they started talking about birthdays. My mum's birthday is the 12th of July, Mike's birthday is the 30th of June, and they're both of the same birth sign, Cancer. And Mike reminded my mother of a birthday present that she'd sent to him 22 years previous, on his 18th birthday. We were together when he was 17. So on his 18th birthday, she sent over, and Mike reminded her of this. She'd actually forgotten about it. He said, "You sent over a shoebox with some potato chips, Irish potato crisps." He said, "Some money in an envelope." It would have been very little money in an envelope, and some sweatshirts. They probably would have been second-hand sweatshirts. And Mike reminded my mum of this, and she said, "You remember that, Mike?" He said, "Mrs. Egan," he said, "very few people have given me anything in my life." Yes, I remember this. Scott Welch, former British and Commonwealth heavyweight champion, fought for the world heavyweight title. He got choked up, he had to leave the room. I started crying. I broke down and started crying. This is a man that could have been a billionaire athlete, remembering a couple of packets of crisps, a couple of pounds in an envelope and a couple of second-hand sweatshirts 22 years previous. He looked at me, excuse the language, he goes, "Joe, motherfucker, you're always crying." He made me cry so many times, and he embraced my mum and he embraced me. And even with all what he's achieved in his life, all the greatness that he's achieved, the sadness that he's had to endure in his life is enough for 10 lifetimes.
How is he now? I mean, from that time, did you see him often, or do you ever speak? Or
we speak regularly, and we speak 3-4 times a year.
Yeah.
We keep in touch as best we can. If I get to go to America, if he's about, we meet up. I've had a lot of friends in his company over the years, and he's always spoke highly of me, and I speak highly of him. And we've got a friendship that will stand the test of time, you know. I love the man dearly, and I'm very, very proud to say that he's my friend.
I want to talk about another, my all-time favourite, Muhammad Ali, because I thought he was the greatest of all time, and I'm a huge fan. Huge fan. But you met him, didn't you? I think you met him a few times.
4 times, Liam.
Didn't you tell me that rather sad story about the fact when you went round the last time to see him? Didn't you all go to America to see him at one point?
We went to Louisville. I met him on 4 occasions. I was very, very privileged. To me, not just one of the greatest men to enter a boxing ring, one of the greatest men to enter the world. Boxing was privileged to have this man. He could have turned his hand to American football, athletics. He was just a supreme athlete. Boxing was blessed to have that man. And the GOAT, the greatest of all time, is moniker. In my eyes, he probably was. But when I got to meet him, I met him on 4 different occasions. It was such a privilege to be in that man's company. We went to Louisville. We went to a party at the Ali Centre, Muhammad Ali Centre. It was Jimmy Ellis's birthday party, Muhammad Ali's boyhood friend, another former champion. Rahman Ali was in attendance, Ernie Terrell was in attendance, Ernie Shavers, George Cavallo. Oh my God, the list is endless of all these great champions was in attendance. But Muhammad couldn't attend because he'd had surgery on his arm. And his wife was in attendance, and she was explaining why the great Muhammad couldn't attend his boyhood friend's party because he'd had surgery on his arm. But she said if any of us would like to come and see him at the house, we were very welcome. The Irish and the English contingent that had come over to visit him, she said you're very welcome to come to the house. Now we were expecting the house to be in the surrounding areas of Louisville. It was actually in Michigan. It was Al Capone's old house.
Oh, really amazing.
Yeah, but with a 6-hour drive, we didn't realise they organised the tour bus. Jimmy Ellis's brother, Jerry Ellis, he organised the transport the next day, and the UK and Irish contingent travelled on the bus 6 hours. But to go to Muhammad Ali's house to meet him at his house, I would walk on broken glass and on bare feet to go and meet this man. Anyway, we got to his house, we went through the gates, greatest of all time. Like I said, it was Al Capone's old house, and we met the greatest in his home. He'd had plaster Paris on his arm, and we were asked that any photographs that we have with him, don't put them on social media because they didn't want them to be seen, you know, on his medication and everything else. And fair play, everybody that was there that day
they
respected them wishes. You know, we were in the attendance in his home.
What was his condition at the time? Was he able to talk, or could he?
He was murmuring because the medication he was on for his surgery on his arm didn't help his illness. You know, but it shows you the man. Not only was he a great heavyweight champion of the world, he was the longest surviving member of that illness. He has said president. No one else has survived as long as he had with his illness.
It's the only man, I have to say, it's the only man that I ever, when he died, I cried. I have to say that's the only time I've ever sort of cried of someone male that I know. I was really
the world
emotional.
cried that day. The world cried. You can be sure. You can be sure there was tears all over the world for that man. You know, people that had never met the man, people that had never even followed boxing, but they knew who he was. You know, he was just a very remarkable human being. You know,
I met him once. At a book signing in Harrods years ago, and he was all right, not quite. And I remember queuing up twice so he could sign my book. So after he signed it once and you get a photograph taken with him, I went round again, joined the back end of the queue and had another photo. Amazing. One of the great things about knowing Joe is getting to meet all of these world famous champions, because we did your first DVD, Joe Egan and the Toughest Men on the Planet, and I have to say I met so many famous people.
Over 30 world champions.
And astonishing.
To hear the stories, of these guys, because I won't say all fighters, 99.9% of fighters come from very humble beginnings. People say they come from the guts, or I don't like using that terminology. Fighters have very humble beginnings. You know, you tend to try to fight your way out of the environment that you're living in, which at the time, usually for a boxer, isn't great. And when you hear the stories of all these champions, where they came from, what they had to endure, and their life, it's amazing, you know.
And some of them, I had some of the people on the list that I've got privileged to meet through Joe. Sugar Ray Leonard, fantastic. Jake LaMotta, Evander Holyfield, Frank Bruno, of course Mike Tyson, Nigel Benn, Steve Collins, and the list goes on. Roberto Duran and all that. Tell us that story about Jake LaMotta, because people may have heard this before, but I had the great privilege of meeting him.
Oh, it was amazing. I boxed in front of Jake LaMotta we boxed in Atlantic City. I fought in Atlantic City on 2 occasions, and I'd been beaten on the first occasion in Atlantic City. So 3 years after or 4 years after, I'm boxing again in Atlantic City, and I'm fighting Bruce Seldon, who was the American #1. He went on to win the world heavyweight title. So I really was cannon fodder. I was there to showboat Bruce Seldon, but I didn't go to the script, and I won probably the best win of my career, you know. But in attendance was 10 great world champions: Jake LaMotta, Rocky Graziano, Joe Frazier, Jersey Joe Walker, Sandy Sadler, Billy Convito at the firm, Floyd Patterson, Chico Vija, and Alexa Aguelo. 10 great champions in attendance. So we're boxing in their honour, and I was never a good boxer. I was just a tough fighter, but I got beaten that many times as a boy growing up by the bullies. You know, I got all my punishment out of the ring. Really, the punishment that I suffered in the ring was tame compared to what I used to get beaten on the streets by the bullies. All my years boxing, only ever had 1 tooth knocked out. I got 2 teeth knocked out on the day I made Motor Communion by the bully boys. So I could endure punishment. So when I was boxing Seldon, he battered me in the first round. I went back to my corner. My cornerman wanted to throw the towel in, retire me on my stool. Now, I took the punishment off Mike Tyson for nearly 2 years. I took the punishment when I fought Leonard Lewis. So I know I can endure punishment. So I said to my cornerman, I'm not quitting on my stool. I can take this. Anyway, I stood up to come out for round 2. Bruce Seldon couldn't believe, after bashing me in round 1, that I was coming out for round 2. Anyway, the bell went. There was a loud hitting. I couldn't land a punch on him in the first round. He was too fast and graceful, but he stood still for that split second when the bell went in round 2, and I caught him a body shot. Oh, it was a good punch. Boom, took the wind out of his sails, and it slowed him down. Anyway, I went on to win the fight. Like I said, probably the best win of my career. But I have to go to hospital after the fight because I'm all busted up. Even though I won, but what I didn't realise what was happening outside of the ropes. Jake LaMotta, the raging bull, he was fighting the fight outside of the ropes because it was like a throwback to one of his fights. Anyway, I brought to the ambulance. I'm put into the ambulance. I'm all busted up, in a lot of pain, and the ambulance is delayed for some reason. Now I knew Seldon wasn't coming in the ambulance because I didn't punish him like he punished me. But Jake LaMotta, the raging bull, was brought to the ambulance. He fell and he hurt his arm and he cut his eye. And I didn't realise this. I had enough problems inside of the ropes to not be concerned what was happening outside of the ropes. Anyway, he looked at me and he goes, "The heavyweights, great fight, kid. Best anaesthetic I've ever had. The pain was just lifted from me. The raging bull complimented me on a fight." Anyway, we became friends in that journey in the ambulance. I stayed in touch with Jake. I visited him in New York and visited him many times in America, and he came to the UK and he did me the greatest of honours. He did a couple of book signings with me.
Yeah,
he did a few book signings with me. We did some after dinner speaking events. And Liam actually filmed one of the book signings. I think he might have filmed them both. But we were being interviewed.
I remember Richard Dunn was there.
Richard Dunn,
Silky Jones.
Silky Jones, yeah. That was in Doncaster. That was in Doncaster. And Andy Booker, my good friend, and Mike Tyson's biggest fan, and very close friend. Andy Booker organised the book signing in Doncaster, and the champions came to the book signing, and Jake led the book signing. Anyway, we've been interviewed afterwards by the BBC. And the BBC, Liam was filming, the BBC asking us questions. So they said to Jake, "Are you and Joe friends a long time?" And Jake looked at the camera and he goes, "Me and Joe go way back." He said, "Joe was like me. Joe would fight anybody." You get a compliment like that by the raging bull. But then he goes, "But he wasn't so fat then." And I put a bit of weight on since my boxing days, and I finished.
Well, what a moment!
Liam, it was incredible.
And then he did his speech from on Waterfront, didn't he?
Yeah, because they had the Marlon Brando movie. Was it Marlon Brando?
Yes, Marlon Brando.
Marlon Brando, on the waterfront.
Yeah.
And it was about Rocky Graziano, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And he'd done the speech. Rocky and Jake were boyhood friends.
Really? Yeah.
They were boyhood friends. They lived, because I knew a lot of Jake's story, and they lived around the corner from each other in the Bronx. And they grew up together and both went on to be two of the greatest fighters ever to grace a ring.
And what's Joe Egan like? You met him some years back, did you?
18 years ago when I boxed in Atlantic City. Jake was one of the guests of honour with Rocky Graziano, Joe Frazier, Jersey Joe Walker,
But I really had that.
18 years ago. 18 years ago.
Wow,
18
you
years
know,
ago.
You weren't so fat. You know.
No, I was a little bit lighter then.
Lighter,
I was, yeah, I was a little bit lighter.
Regardless of what, you're in there and you give them your all. Give everything till you can't stand up anymore. That's what you're doing. Like I did. You're doing the same thing. God bless you.
Fantastic. And then I remember the time with, we're reminiscing here, Evander Holyfield.
Oh, yeah.
That was fantastic. And that was with Scott Welsh, wasn't it?
Scott
Wasn't it, down
Welsh,
in Brighton?
yeah.
Tell us that story about what he said when he was fighting Tyson.
Well, Scott Welch boxed on the undercard.
Yeah. Scott
fought Henry Ekamwande for 12 rounds for another version of the world title on the Tyson-Holyfield undercard. And Scott said after his fight, he went to the dressing rooms of Holyfield and Tyson to wish them both good luck. And he said he went into Mike's dressing room and he said it was like a party atmosphere. Everybody was in great spirits because they really believed that Mike had the beatings of Evander. Like everybody had the belief that Mike had the beatings of Evander. Nobody believed Evander could beat Mike Tyson except Evander Holyfield. So Mike was in the dressing room, Scott wished him good luck. Then Scott went to Evander's dressing room and it was completely empty of everybody, just Evander down at the far end of the dressing room on his knees praying. He's a very religious man. And Scott walked in and he said, Evander, I've come to wish you good luck. And Evander looked up and he said, thank you, Scotty. He said, Scotty, if you don't believe, you won't achieve. He was the only one that believed he could beat Mike Tyson, and he did.
Yeah, and he told us that story that night down in Brighton, didn't he, as well, to you? And Michael Watson was there. Fantastic.
It was an amazing. To be in these men's company.
Oh, it's amazing, isn't it?
It's a privilege, Liam, for me to be there, and I know it's a great privilege for you to be there, but to be able to say that these men are your friends. You know, you've made friends with these guys. I've made friends with them. It's wonderful.
Scott walked into the changing room. Scott walked into the changing rooms to wish Evander good luck in his fight with Mike Tyson. And as he walked in, Evander was in the changing rooms on his own.
One more time. No, I'm not going to.
One more time. As he walked in. I will do. I get goose pimples. I get goose pimples when I say it. I get goose pimples. Scott told me he walked into the changing rooms to wish Evander good luck in his fight with Mike Tyson. And Evander was in the changing rooms on his own at the end, sitting on a chair. And Scott came in and said, good luck, Evander. And Evander looked at him, raised his fist and said, I will prevail. And nobody else believed that he could. And he did. And he did. You know, we proved all the critics wrong.
Well, yeah.
He could prove everybody wrong.
That's what part of life is all about. Believing. If you believe, you will receive. But if you don't believe, you already lost.
One of my fantastic experiences, both for me and my partner Yvette, was meeting Sugar Ray Leonard and going over to Dublin for that. And again, that was only a few months after Mike Tyson had come through the airport. I filmed you with Sugar Ray Leonard.
Well, what a humble man. Beautiful man. When I sparred with Mike that day, Ray didn't come back to the house that particular night. He must have went back to wherever he needed to go. But a number of months later, Sugar Ray Leonard came to the Catskills again. And I was still there, took another beating. And I remember Ray coming over to me and he said, you were here the last time I was here. And I said, that's right. He goes, you've come back again, you're a very brave young man. I said, no, I haven't been anywhere. And he goes, you're taking this punishment regular. I said, yes, but one of the days I might get the better of Mike. I never did. Anyway, we got chatting and I said, you might say hello to my mother, Ray, would you mind? He goes, your mother's here? I said, no, my mum's back in Ireland, but if you come back to the house, I said, maybe we can phone her. Anyway, he came back to the house, and because I was there, and I phoned my mum. I said, Mum, I said, Sugar Ray Leonard wants to say hello to you. So my mum came onto the phone, because she's a massive boxing fan. She never liked to watch me box, because no mother wants to see her son being beaten up, but she loved Muhammad Ali, and she loved the sport of boxing. Anyway, she spoke to Sugar Ray Leonard, and I said to Ray, I said, maybe one day, Ray, you might visit my mum in Ireland. And he did. You know, Mike Tyson's visited my mum many times, but this particular visit from Mike, a few months later, Sugar Ray Leonard visited. And when my mum had a cup of tea with Ray, and she said, "Oh, Mike was here a few months ago." He's like, "Oh," because they're great friends.
Yeah.
Ray Leonard and Mike Tyson are great friends, and I had the privilege of bringing them around Ireland. We went to Sligo. We went to a few places.
Yeah.
He loved the history of the Irish because it's a great history with the boxers.
Pipes, wasn't he? Was he playing the pipes?
Oh, listen, we were in the hotel and. He got up, he was playing the instruments, the musical instruments, and enjoying the Cayley and the Gaelic music, and with great crack.
Fantastic.
Great crack.
Yeah.
He's a don't he look $1 million?
Oh, he's got such a way he moves and everything, the style
Beautiful
of him.
man.
I got to ride in his limo from the airport because we didn't have transport.
Yes.
And I think it was the same limo driven by the monk.
Yeah.
So it was fantastic, and he was just charming. He was just talking about his family and everything. It was just wonderful.
Very, very charming man. Beautiful, handsome man.
Yeah.